So before we get into today's video, I have a pretty cool announcement to make. We finally have some new merch! The old site had been looking pretty stagnant for some time now, so I'm happy to say that we finally have some new designs in, featuring separate designs for Ramcoon, that's me, Wolfram, and our 4 main Fungaloid mascots, each with their own matching sticker pack. Which, by the way, 20% of all Fungaloid related sales will go towards actual fungi conservation organizations, since as of right now, only 0.2% of global funds go towards conserving these species, which collectively hold just over a third of all global CO2 emissions each year. And not only that, provide many important uses for us in both medical and commercial fields, and are of course very important for environmental diversity and much more. You can find out more about it at 1amwolfram.neocities.org/fungaloid/guide main. I know that's a long link, but that's why you can find it both on screen right now and also in the description to find out more. The providers of the merch are the same as the last merch drop, which I personally find to be very comfy and very high quality, especially on the prints, which is something I think is very important. But I hope you guys like them, and you can find them at our merch store at 1amwolfram-shop.forfall.com. Also on screen right now and in the description, and you can get this merch right now. Also, I forget to mention until like way later in the video for some reason, these designs are staying like permanently until a new design is made for the website, so you have plenty time to go and nab one if you want one. I don't know when we'll be getting new designs, but for now, these will be on the site until new designs are made eventually. And then even then, I'll probably end up giving some extra time for you guys to nab them if you want them then. Now, I know I said the next video was gonna be on No I'm Not a Human, but yeah, it's looking like it's gonna be a big one. I'm like just halfway through the script as of starting this one, and I just need something else to be out in the meantime. So instead, I'm gonna talk about another game that I've been wanting to make something about since I first played it. That being FNAF 1 Remake, created by Marco Antonio, aka the same person who made Mario Madness, the FNF mod, and is right now working on another fan game titled Welcome to Freddy's, which also looks insanely fucking good. We'll talk more about it later. Much like last time when I talked about Five Nights at Candy's Free, go watch that video after this one by the way, it's very swag money. There are 5 main pieces of criteria that I like to look for in FNAF fan games. 1. What is the game's style and designs? In general, how does the game present itself and the characters we'll be facing off against? 2. Is the gameplay unique? Pretty self-explanatory. 3. What's the story here? Also self-explanatory. 4. How does the difficulty increase over time? Like, does it curve well or does it get way too difficult out of nowhere? And 5. How long are the nights and how much downtime is there? I don't want it to feel like an actual night shift if it's not necessary. But to get right into it, FNAF 1 Remake is a take on the FNAF ransomware/malware trend that occurred about 2 years ago now during 2024, with the top line of the Game Jolt page stating, "Fun games free download now at www.com. And the game itself was made as an April Fool's joke, which with how fun the game was to play, I would not have known. At least until the end of the game, but we'll talk about that when we get there. The game itself gives off the vibe of a vague memory of the first game, and starting the game up, we are taken through a few frames, including a loading screen belonging to an old version of the Game Maker engine, and a banner art that features a similar line of text from the Game Jolt page, before we are given an intro bit of monologue by an unknown character. It's been 10 years since you first had the pleasure of experiencing our wonderful story. This story. It brings you good memories, right? But you are bored. All you've ever wanted is a fresh perspective, and I can give it to you. The sands of time shift and arrive before you. You grow older. Your vessel gradually breaks down. But our story fills you with a glimmer of sweet remembrance. Beautiful, wonderful, amazing, disgusting, nostalgia. I tell you, that stuff is like a genie in a bottle nowadays. But history will always come back around, and you won't accept that. Your warped perspective fills your brain. Memories of good times, bad times, innocent times. And so, you come crawling back. You want to be young again. Everyone does, right? You want to be young. One more time. I will give you that privilege. I will give you the gift of living through our story. but better. I can already hear you now. You think you could improve upon perfection? Perish the thought. But you don't know what I can do. You see, I'm in control now. My influence permeates the very foundation of this wretched place. I have the potential to paint and poke and prod and mold it into your greatest fantasy. Like a painter to the canvas. Imagine that. My very own freak show. And you have front row seats. Now why don't you take a seat? And let me put you back together. One blasted memory at a time. We get a little look at a figure fading in before the visuals begin to blur, and we're then greeted by a menu in that classic FNAF 1 style. In getting a glimpse of Freddy himself, something is clearly not right about him. His mouth is abnormally stretched down into a frown, and his eyes, while they look gaunt like the rest of him due to the lighting here, are actually non-existent and are kind of just a shallow socket of where his eyes should be. It has the vague shape of Freddy. If you were to view his silhouette, you probably wouldn't even bat an eye, but the details are twisted into this broken, fucked up version of himself. That is just really unnerving to look at. And of course, I'm going to acknowledge the elephant in the room. His bow tie is droopy, and that's weird. No, in all seriousness, the transition from full screen to the smaller windowed version is really cool, showing us right off the bat that whatever entity we're talking to here really does hold all the strings in this scenario. And of course, with FNAF 1 Remake having ties to the FNAF Ransomware trend, we can and will see some influence from popular additions to the trend. Starting with the starter of the trend being Fever Dreamer Team's video that started the trend back in 2024, titled Five Nights at Freddy's Ransomware Infected Pirated Version Found, 7x.org, or more commonly known as Five Nights at Freddy's Settings, which can now only be found through the Internet Archive since it has been taken down from YouTube. Unfortunately, this original video does use the use of AI image generation for a lot of the visuals, which ended up becoming an issue for a lot of the trend itself, because at the time it was still at that spooky, weird in-between phase where things were still not looking right at all. So while I'm going to be talking about it and referencing it in this section, do know that I absolutely despise the use of AI and do not support it in any shape or form. Personally, I think we kind of need the water and earth for things that are real, like the humans who make art. Trust me, I would much rather see a shaky-lined, bad anatomy, poorly colored or shaded piece birthed by a real human being who's been vulnerable enough to show off a talent that they're proud of and are taking enjoyment in than anything AI could attempt to recreate. In Five Nights at Freddy's Settings, we get a pretty classic recreation of those old tutorial videos from back around the 2010s. I mean, even Nyankat's here, so that's how you know it's on business. However, I can't help but point out the fact that they forgot to change the date on the clock. So I guess either this person is really into old 2010s aesthetics, or it's just a mistake. And as our person recording here explains, in a notepad window, they found a free version of Five Nights at Freddy's, and loading it up, it just immediately is obviously not the same game. Hey, wait a minute. This startup screen actually belongs to the Game Maker engine, one of the older ones to be exact, and it is something that is used and referenced in a lot of the trend itself, especially the little pop-up of the game banner for a frame or two, usually displaying some kind of play game at our sketchy website kind of text. On top of this, from what we can see in this menu, other common visuals for the trend were things like typos, glitchy or warped visuals, just kind of a sense that the game was trying to emulate Freddy's without being Freddy's, in a very similar way to how FNAF 1 Remake does. The gameplay continues as you can expect, so do things I've already mentioned. However, the notable climax of the video itself is when the player is killed by Freddy. Not for the actual jump scare itself, actually the jump scare visual reminds me of those old Minecraft wall stickers that's like a hole leading into a cave or something, but for what happens afterwards. Once the player is killed, they're given a few lines of text, Bible quotes, it's kind of just a little bit of a warning and a how to pay link. Being important as the player's computer is then shut down. Don't know how it's still recording after that, but whatever. And upon loading back up, their files are locked away by a group called 7x.org, who from this wall of text explained that they're stopping greedy people like us from taking money away from creators, who put time and effort into their creations. And that somehow means that we have to send money to them now instead? Sure. And fun fact, in a remake of this video that gets rid of the AI imagery, this screen right here is the origin for the "when she touch your ding-a-ling" image. I just felt that that was very necessary information. Accompanying this screen is this creepy garbled audio, which is definitely very panic-inducing, along with the big flashing 1 hour left sign. It's definitely a good scare and sets a good example for others to follow. And follow people did. As I've already mentioned, there was a remake of this video, or at least this frame itself, to get rid of the AI imagery. However, for the life of me, I cannot find the person who made it, or that retake video itself, simply because of how many ransomware videos there now are out there. And a lot of them, I'll be honest, are really underwhelming. Not to group them up too much together, but a large majority of these takes just take it way too far when trying to be creepy, and it loses out on a lot of potential by making the build-up slower. No, they just dunk you right in the deep end with overly crunchy and saturated visuals and loud noises. A lot lean into the ooh, spooky, scary, blood-dripping eyes and Freddy is red now, or hyper-realistic eyes, or a spooky realistic face, and a lot just forget that it's actually meant to be a piece of ransomware. I get it, the videos are meant to be scary, but ransomware games are meant to be believable enough to download and not think anything is weird until they already have your stuff. Anyone who wants to play FNAF that badly that they have to pirate a game, which is, I can't remember how much it is, but here it is on screen, has obviously seen it before and would easily see, oh, this is a piece of malware, and would immediately wipe their shit. But a lot of what I've seen is an inability to hold back and make an actually scary experience. A lot are essentially just clones of this first example. Player plays spooky game until they are jump scared and then their stuff is taken away with a scary screen. With a lot of the video more put into this scary end screen than the rest of it. In this exact format every single time. Which narratively makes sense as a horror concept, but if somebody wants to yoink and sell your data, they're just gonna get it right away. For a large majority of the time, they're not gonna hit a jigsaw play my games and you'll be fine. No, the moment you load up that exe file, you're already fucked. In fact, you could say what is the definitive starter for this trend is the most egregious for this. That being FNAF 2 Stingray, which has kind of become a sort of urban legend. Is it real? Is it not? Personally, I don't know. But supposedly it was an Android APK virus disguised as FNAF 2, which would play normally up until the point that you beat Night 5 and got the paycheck. Just absolutely absurd that a virus would take that long to kick in at all. But essentially it was supposedly a specific variation of Trojan virus, which is a real virus titled Android.elite.1.origin, which was recorded to be real and was found in other APKs such as one for Angry Birds, which is a free game. I don't know why you wouldn't have just downloaded it normally, but I'm not an expert of viruses, I can't say much else on Android Elite, but Stingray itself I've been using supposedly a lot with since, like I said, it's kind of become an urban legend of sorts, with this ransomware/malware trend taking a lot of liberty with trying to recreate it. So now it's really hard to find info on the actual virus because there's so many copycats and clones now. But for a spooky horror trend about a scary robot bear, I'm willing to put that aside, because throughout the trend as a whole, there are a few that do stand out to me personally, with FNAF 1 Remake being one of them. Kinda. It's kind of made to mock the trend, but technically it's also kind of a part of it. It's weird. However, I think it's best for me not to wander from our main topic much longer, and I'll just talk about them as they come up, as a lot of the notable ones I wish to talk about do share similarities to FNAF 1 Remake. And quickly, before we actually get into Night 1, we can actually find the most horrific part of this game. Discord integration. Getting into Night 1, we can finally get a look at our office, and much like our examples we just looked at, it appears crunchy and missing a lot of details while still keeping the things you would recall if making it by memory, such as the poster or fan. However, whereas most videos would call it a day and just make it hyper-saturated and unintelligible, FNAF 1 Remake instead desaturates the vision, something which is a stylistic choice I love. One of the things that makes FNAF 1 visually stand out to me and what kind of made that whole original ghostly haunted establishment that's falling behind vibe was this strange desaturation it had about it. No colors particularly stood out in the cameras too much, and it was accompanied by this harsh lighting that made the darkness of the environment pop. A lot of my favorite renders and visuals in the series are still from FNAF 1 because of this style that I personally believe has been lost in the games afterwards. And this isn't just an old man yells at cloud situation. Between FNAF 1 and 2, we immediately see a bump in saturation, and for the most part that is just because between establishments, the FNAF 2 location is meant to pop more, and be a much more lively location that isn't set to be shut down at the end of the week. When we see the withered animatronics, they still have that same desaturated tone as in FNAF 1, because that's just how they look. And the toys, do I need to spell it out? They're meant to be colorful, that's the point. And of course the addition of the flashlight to the cameras takes away a lot of the darkness that was originally used to shroud the animatronics away from us as the viewer. That's not an opinion of mine, that's literally how it is. It's not necessarily a bad thing, I just kind of wish that we kept some of those horror elements from FNAF 1. But FNAF 1 Remake leans into that darker tone of the first game, and I'm very happy for it, especially as you'll see very soon. The same entity from before, once again, begins to speak to us. This is just as you remember it, right? Just like the old days. I am glad you're here. I'm sure you're acquainted with how stuff works here. Basic scheme is the same though. Don't let them get you. Do whatever it takes. Look at them on the camera, drag the doors to close them, click the halls to turn on the lights. You know the deal. Try to keep me entertained. On this first night, the only animatronic that we have to worry about is Bonnie, now named Bonnie with a Y. Very important distinction. As the beginning text states, he works very similarly to how he does normally, except now he can travel down both hallways, which makes a lot of sense, actually. Why couldn't they just do that? And when he gets to our doorway, we just gotta make sure to slam the gate down in front of his face. Which, speaking of this gate design, it reminds me a lot of another ransomware media. That being Weird Mobile Port. In FNAF Weird Mobile Port created by Unclium, we are, much like with other ransomware media, greeted by our player talking about the port they have found, before being greeted first of all by a banger, before we get given a little story which describes the player in-game as having been dragged down to hell, and in what we originally assumed to be a safe place we must hold off till 6 AM against 4 hungry monsters. That's one way to put it. Once in the office, we can find the harsh movement of the camera to be very similar to our own. A sharp snapping motion that works well at keeping you tense with every turn, and also takes utility of our windowed state having the window actually move with our own movement, which I think is insanely fucking cool and isn't anything that I've seen before in a fan game. And as you can assume, the player here is given a chain link fence as their door, instead of the usual big metal bulky door. And to bring another tie to FNAF 1 Remake, Weird Mobile Port also includes a very desaturated look to it. Upon opening the camera, we find the main gang, except they're all missing a lot of their features, namely anything from the waist down. And the player doesn't get a lot of time to admire these freaks of nature before they all vanish from view and are replaced with flashing text stating, "on their way." Getting a quick glimpse at Bonnie and Chica in the main hall before Bonnie presumably comes barreling down the left hallway. The player is able to defend the office with the gate, but then the footage cuts to Chica standing in the right hall corner. And dear lord, this is the type of shit that gives me goosebumps. I know this because it gave me goosebumps. Chica's big gaping maw is actually horrific to look at, paired with those big beady eyes obscured in the shadows of the corner. This is some good shit. And there's no funky, loud, twitchy business. Chica just ends up carrying onto the office with this deep, grumbling breathing noise that only seems to up her creep factor for me. Then we get a small gap of peace where we can see Freddy slowly making his way to the office, until Foxy decides it's time to run and... yeah, I'm shocked too. The game carries on until, for a short moment, the screen is covered by this view of Chica saying to donate Bitcoin of his website, while holy music plays. And our player is definitely too calm for the situation, just noting it as something that happens sometimes. Things that apparently get boring until halfway through 3 AM, where all of the animatronics suddenly disappear, and much like the Chica pop-up, we get one of Foxy, which talks about pirating movies whilst blasting the pirate song from Lazy Town. Circus music is in full blast as the player frantically checks their surroundings, finding all 4 animatronics in the main hall before they switch to this main creature called Hybrid, and a deafening silence befalls the room. Cutting a short bit forward, the Hybrid is everywhere. No matter where the player looks, they are looking right back at them as the circus music continues to blast on. The power eventually goes out, but 6 AM hits just in time. And of course, it's a ransomware video, you couldn't leave without the spooky screen, and yet another banger, I guess. This one is very straight to the point. Hi, thank you for playing my game. You have 30 seconds to donate to. Or else people sell your private information for money. Time's ticking. And our player is given 30 seconds to pay up, and as you guess, they don't. Instead saying, I paid $4 for this shit before getting mad for not being like the OG Freddy's, rating it a 4 out of 10. And I think it's very clear to see a lot of inspiration in this piece specifically when it comes to FNAF 1 Remake. The gaunt expressions of the animatronics are very akin to Fun Bear's design, the lack of a lower half, the chain link fence doors, and a few things I'll save for later. While on the topic of designs, Bonnie's weirdly deformed face actually reminds me of Vibing Leaf's take on the trend, with the video Freddy Dream, where we can see a model of Freddy getting squished and morphed into these eerie looking poses and shapes, leading to the quote, "Love yourself. Honey, severely do me a favor and do something nice for yourself. I'm proud of you. I need fresh air. Could you get me a premium bag of air?" He also hits this little dance at the end after being told to hit the gritty. Yes, this is important. And while obviously it's not exact, the elongated look of a few of those frames of Freddy remind me a lot of Bonnie's droopier face in FNAF 1 Remake. And after this quote ends, the ambience builds, but ultimately doesn't choose to pay off in a big loud scare because it's good enough as is. The video is meant to be weird and chilling, and it does a good job at that in this short runtime. Personally, I feel like a scare at the end of this would have ruined the unnerving energy that it has going for it. It's very simple, but very effective, especially with the audio design that it has. Very unnerving. This first night in FNAF 1 Remake has a decent amount of downtime, but given that it's only Bonnie and it's the first night, it makes sense. But that just means that we get to soak up the ambience of the establishment, and like I said previously, the game does a really good job at leaning into that dark, gritty lighting of the first game, while also encapsulating that unique style of the ransomware trend. Much like how we saw in Weird Mobile Port, the only remaining cameras are for the stage, main hall, Pirate's Cove, and our 2 hallways and hallway corners. And of course, the ambience wouldn't be complete without, well, the ambience. The soundtrack of the game was worked on by Vania, The Warbox, Raftastic, and Stern Video, aka Churney Gurney, who I'm mentioning all of because they did an immaculate job on this game's soundtrack. While it is a short one, the tracks present in the game are really good at just topping off that tense atmosphere and scenario, especially in later scenes that I'll talk about then. And fun fact, the music that plays during the night leitmotif Steinchen, or Serenade in English, a track made by Franz Schubert, which is more commonly known in the fandom as Bonnie's Lullaby, aka the track that plays in the FNAF Free Shadow Bonnie minigame. But for the most part, our first 6-minute long night should pass without much issue. Time-wise, it's not much to write home about, a minute per second just kind of feels right in the way it should be done, you know? But with Bonnie being the only active animatronic, there is quite a bit of downtime here, but of course, once again, first night, what did you expect? You gotta give your players time to get used to the establishment and whatever tools you've given them. You did it. I'm surprised. This is so much fun, isn't it? Someone else might join tonight. We don't like being watched. Look for it on its camera. Use the shock if they get too far. Do note it will drain some of your battery. If you hear their jingle, look in your office. If you see it, click it. Have fun. Instead of time continuing forward on tonight 2, we are pulled back to the same starting 12 AM, forcing us to repeat the same night, but now with harder obstacles. Almost like the game doesn't want us to progress. Tonight, both Chica and Foxy are introduced, aptly being named Chick and Oxy Pirate. Chick works very similarly to Bonnie, except when it comes her time to get to the door, she just absolutely bucks it down the hall, which, for something being introduced on the same night as our Foxy, the character known for running, is a very cruel switch up. Which, while we're on the topic of Chick, before I had played the game, I first found out about it from a piece of shorts media showing off the jump scares present in the game, and Chick's was actually the one to freak me out the most, and made me decide that I actually wanted to play the game before I saw anything else. A lot like how I said about Freddy, or well, in this case Fun Bear as he's called, the general shape and vibes are kept of these animatronics, while the details really form into a distorted shape of what they once were. And in the case of each one, I feel like their memorable attributes have kind of been accentuated, while also adding in features more commonly associated with ransomware media as I've mentioned so far. Firstly, with Fun Bear, and I feel like this kind of goes for all of the animatronics, and we'll see this in their own separate ways, but the FNAF 1 animatronics have these huge eye sockets compared to how much space their eyes actually take up, and Fun Bear specifically takes this and uses the ransomware technique of erasing features. Looking like a combination of weird mobile ports bottomless designs, but if you gave it the when she touch o ding-a-ling face from the 7X.org video. We'll also see generally all of the designs are a bit more elongated, specifically on the limbs, getting more rid of the familiar shape that we know the animatronics for. Bonnie, as I've already stated, reminds me a lot of the Vibing Leaf video. He generally has a stretched, distorted face which fills up his eye sockets with this stretch, leading into obviously more of the stretched and distorted takes on the trend. On top of this, his teeth are also pretty emphasized here, which I believe is a part of Bonnie's original design that pops out, especially due to the darker red inside of his mouth. But I feel like nobody's teeth are quite as memorable as Chick's. Not Foxy, but we'll get to Foxy trust. Chica's teeth in FNAF 1 are quite memorable, at least in my mind, thanks to the old theories that they were the teeth of the body stuffed into Chica's suit since we weren't so accustomed to the look of the endoskeletons at the time, and I personally remember that sticking with me a bit as a kid. So with this possibly influencing Chick's design along with the hyper-realistic eyes and facial features part of the trend, you end up with one of the freakiest not like that designs in the game. I think in specifically the way that Chick's eyes and face are almost always moving freaks me out. I feel like it shouldn't be happening, like something went wrong in the game itself. And of course, she also has the typo of snack being present on her bib, another part of the trend. This design could also be influenced by the design present within the Zacchu 37 archive, which is a whole can of worms. I couldn't go over all of it right now, but one of the videos specifically titled SFM FNAF Assistant Zacchu 37 Season 1 Reupload features a bloodied up design of Chica in the scene where her and Freddy are just having these really grotesque looking faces that are constantly moving about while these muffled screams of agony cry out. It is just absolutely horrific work before she shifts to this baby face, very akin to the same visuals from Weird Mobile Port yet again, and of course in general are very similar to Chick. And finally, Foxy, now called Oxy Pirate, follows that trend of general rememberable vibes by being the lankiest and spikiest out of the group. I've always kind of had a secret rule to the designs in Fangames, that is, does Foxy look cool? Foxy always has to look cool in these games or I'm immediately disappointed, and FNAF 1 Remake definitely delivers. I mean, look at this guy. This is sick as fuck, very well done. And that also makes up for my other secret rule, which is no boop. Bad game. And FNAF 1 Remake, to my knowledge, has no boop, unfortunately. But with the addition of Chick's mechanics, we of course also have Oxy Pirates, which as you can guess is similar to his regular mechanic. Make sure to keep an eye on him in Pirate's Cove, however now to prevent him from getting into our office we must use a controlled shot, which recharges about every 45 seconds, meaning we get to use it about 6 times in a night if we time it just right. But each one will drain our power slightly, so it's best to try and prevent him from progressing as much as possible. On top of this, the game has also introduced a mechanic that makes use of Oxy's long, lanky arms. Throughout the night, we may occasionally hear a jingle sound cue. When this happens, we need to locate Oxy's hook in the office dangling down slowly from the ceiling and shoo it away. If it progresses fully, then he'll get us. Which is quite ironic, as if Oxy leaves the cove, he will not kill us and will instead just block off one of our hallways, making us unable to shut whichever door he's chosen to sit at. In general, Night 2 gets rid of a lot of the downtime from Night 1, with both Bonnie being buffed up a bit and the additions of Chick and specifically Oxy taking up a lot of the time where you're just waiting for people to get to the doors. Hey, I'm just writing this in while in the process of recording everything, so it may be a bit of a jarring cutaway, but also I gotta start remembering to save this since, well, it worked so well last time. We're getting really close to 20,000 subscribers on here, which is something that is absolutely insane that I get to say. So if you're liking the video so far, consider joining us. It would absolutely make for a great start to 2026. On top of that, I'm currently prepping for my first ever subathon that I'll be doing if we manage to reach that goal of 20,000. And also if my ear decides it's had enough of torturing me, because I'm not about to play Spookies for just under possibly a week straight, depending on how long it takes, with an ear that's causing pain in the entire right side of my face over having just too much earwax in it. Yes, that's right, not an infection. Just my ear having a little bit too much wax for comfort and freaking out about it. What the fuck? But yeah, if you want to see me go through 20,000 rooms in Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion, that is me playing the game over and over again 20 times. Consider subscribing. And also hop over to my Twitch if that's your preferred streaming platform, since we're getting really close to our first 1,000 on there too. That's all, enjoy the rest of the video. Night 3. Congrats. Didn't expect for you to get this far. More stuff is on its way. If you hear them laugh, look for him on the cameras. They might pull some tricks on you. Stay focused. Once again brought back for another night, we're now introduced to our final main animatronic, Funbear. Being unique from Freddy by, instead of moving towards us with each laugh, he forces us to go and look at him on the cameras. And he is very aggressive about it if you don't get there in time. I personally think this mechanic alone is a cherry on top for the whole gang. While balancing Bonnie, Chick, and Oxy is a pretty easy task once you get into the rhythm of switching between checking Bonnie and Oxy and just shutting whichever door you hear Chick bucket down, without really having to look at all, actually. Funbear puts all of that into a box and shakes it around like the rabbit inside of the little Wii remote. While looking for Funbear, you can easily get snuck up on by the other animatronics in their own respective ways, while panicking to get to Funbear and stare at him for a decent chunk of time, in time. But that's not all with Funbear. On top of being in the cameras, he may occasionally appear in front of you in your office, pulling your tablet down if you're currently accessing the cameras, forcing you to look at him yet again. And will sometimes just force you to play Simon Says. For the fun of it, I guess. Sucks for you if you were dealing with something else as it starts and you end up missing one of the inputs. But for mechanical loops, that's the only real gripe that I have. You just kind of have to lock in on the Simon Says panel when it shows up, or you will miss what it's trying to tell you. Aside from that though, a lot of the interactions in the gameplay fit really well together. You may get unlucky occasionally, but on most nights you aren't really gonna get a truly unfair outcome, and you have the time to be able to deal with each threat as they show up without being given too much time. It's a nice little blend that I find really enjoyable. Also, while on the topic of Funbear before it becomes out of place, if you attempt to tamper with the game's code at all to maybe skip nights or get stars, you will be shown an anti-cheat screen of Funbear. which I personally think is pretty fucking creepy looking. Funnily enough, as a punishment for trying to cheat, the game forces you to delete your save and start at night 1 again. 'Tis what you get for being a cheater. And while being yet another reference to the 7X org video, the ripped, distorted, almost melting face of Funbear reminds me of 2 different things. Firstly, this secret poster of Freddy from the original FNAF one that used to scare the ever-loving shit out of me as a kid. Like, it was on par with Golden Freddy for me, which we'll get to him soon. But the way the fabric teared and stringed always made me feel like he was trying to tear off his own skin. And secondly, we gotta talk about the last piece of ransomware that I can think of for this video. Oh yeah, also, not what I'm about to talk about, but I can already smell the comments from here asking about Graveyard Shift at Freddy's because I've seen it everywhere while researching ransomware media. I didn't even know it was a ransomware game because I've never really checked it out, but because of the drama associated with the devs that I'm not going to go into here, I most likely will not cover the game. Ever. But the game I want to talk about, last but not least, is Five Nights at Freddy's, which in my opinion is one of the scariest representations of loading up a game and immediately realizing that you should have never downloaded this game. See, something I haven't talked about yet is just how scary ransomware media is. Like, I'm not talking FNAF, I'm talking the real thing. Now, I'm not gonna say my personal opinion on piracy just in case, but as a wise man once said, culture shouldn't exist only for those who can afford it. And then a really weirdly shaped green raccoon thing, I don't know where it came from, but it added on, but if you have the money, please give it to indie creators, they kind of need it to live and shit, you know? I don't know, the weird green raccoon thing said that, guys. But you know, maybe you just want to sit down after a stressful day of whatever the fuck and play a new game that you've been wanting to try out. Only issue is you don't have the money right now, or you don't have an income of money at all, but still want the experience. So you try to go and look for a free version of the game. After searching for a while, you finally find a download file, but since you're so tired and you spent this much time trying to find just one valid download, you decide to grab it and give it a go, just for it to be nothing like what you expected it to be. You already know you're doing something that you shouldn't really be doing, and the rug feels like it's been swept from underneath you as your information, possibly along with your whole computer, is encrypted by some asshole who's gonna sell your information for their own gain. Unless you manage to pay them a large sum of money that you didn't even have to spend on a game to begin with. And even then, most of the time they probably won't even give your information back to you. It's a very scary, very real experience. Real games with real viruses hidden within them in general are horrific, and it's not just something tied to ransomware. But back to Five Nights at Freddy's, the game's description is just a basic summary of both the phone guy's lines and the game itself in general. Welcome to your new summer job at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, where kids and parents alike come for entertainment and food as far as the eye can see. The main attraction is Freddy Fazbear, of course, and his 2 friends. They're animatronic robots programmed to please the crowds. The robot's behavior has become somewhat unpredictable, and then the description cuts off there. All we're given from the rest of the page is the name of the developers, Free Games at CW, and this is the only game on their account. Looking at the game's screenshots, we can see these twisted, distorted versions of Withered Bonnie and Chica that remind me a lot of that same melty, ripping look of the Freddy poster and Funbear's anti-cheat screen. Getting into the game, we're given a pretty ominous-looking menu screen with a very angry-looking Withered Freddy render, and our only visible option is to play. No night shown, just to play. Getting into the night, there's big ol' text, Night 1 Midnight, kind of making it look like it was made for mobile, which is where a lot of these ransomware, or well, just virus games in general, can appear on. APKs are kind of just targeted like that. Before being put into a more saturated, crunchy version of The Office, not dissimilar to what we've already seen in other interpretations. What I really enjoy about this one, though, is the sound design of it. Before even popping up the camera, the backing ambience is indistinguishable and garbled, almost like coming out of a radio in another room that's not tuned in quite right. And popping up the tablet, we can hear these horrific noises coming from Chica and Bonnie as they begin to slowly make their way to us, as we can do nothing but watch as they creep closer and closer to us. With Bonnie's sound cue occurring as he moves, but Chica's playing constantly when viewing the cam she's in. Which, by the way, we only have 3 of them, new high score for missing cams. Specifically, Chica's sound freaks me out a lot. Something about it just kind of irks me in a way that I can't describe. Especially when she gets real close to the camera in our hallway and this creepy droning noise gets paired with it. What was that? I'm sure it's fine. When either Bonnie or Chica enter the office, we need to put on our mask, which for some strange reason drains the power. I don't know, maybe it's a heated mask. Gotta stay comfortable at night, I guess. Gotta stay comfortable on the night shift. You don't know, but it isn't. And after sitting in front of us for a while with the mask on, they'll reset back to the main hall to loop again. And for the most part, that's it. As long as you don't run out of power and upset Freddy or leave your camera up for too long, which, oh, by the way, that thing from before? Yeah, it's Foxy. It's Foxy. He kills you if you leave the camera up for too long. The game is possible to beat though, and upon doing so, we get a really sad sounding wind screen of the UCN wind sound effect, but it gets cut off right as it's about to start. But aside from that, that's it. Is what I would say if that acronym wasn't so oddly familiar. I actually don't know if it's just a coincidence or if Cogware Studios suddenly decided to start making ransomware games, but Five Nights at Freddy's was made by Squeaks de Corke, who I've talked about previously in what is still one of my favorite videos on the channel about Shipwreck 64. Go watch it now. This isn't a request. Actually, can you go watch it after this? We still have a little bit to go. But go watch it at some point regardless, and go see some of Squeak's actual work. Especially HIO9, go wishlist HIO9. It's the successor to Shipwreck 64, and from what I've seen so far, it looks very exciting. There will be a link on screen and in the description linking to the Steam page so that you can go and wishlist it if you find it interesting, which I'm sure you will. Five Nights at Freddy was another joke made as a take on the ransomware trend, but specifically to try and make the look without using AI originally, and then turned into a game for fun. But it honestly does a really good job being visually and auditorially horrific for what it is and how quickly it was put together. And that horrendous noise that Chica makes? It's the fuck-ass PlayStation Free baby ad, are you fucking kidding me? You're having fun, right? I wish we could keep this going forever. I wish I could keep this going forever. I don't want to lose you again. Night 4 unfortunately doesn't add in any new animatronics or mechanics. It mainly stands to buff up the already existing animatronics, which is a bit disappointing for me personally. However, it does still serve as a really stressful night in and of itself, where you get little to no downtime really. But given what's about to come next, I think it makes up for it. This is it, I guess. You don't want to leave, right? Do you want to play again? Just like the old days? Night 5 is our last main night, and similarly to Night 5 and FNAF 4, the first 4 hours play like a buffed up version of Night 4, with each of the animatronics trying their best to disrupt your ability to get to the end of the night. However, once that 4 AM hits, it can't end this way. You don't understand what I've achieved here today. How difficult it was to get them all in one place. Don't you see? All of this was for you. And all you can do to repay me is leave me here to rot? I won't have it. If this isn't good enough for you, then I have to make it perfect. Clearly I am impure if you would rather abandon what we have together. So let me prove it to you. I will show you the perfect night. I'll give you everything you ever needed. It'll be the greatest celebration. The party of a lifetime all for you. And this time, you won't ever want out. On this final night, we finally come face to face with this strange entity that's been accompanying us this whole time. Buddy. Buddy, to put it very clearly, is a manifestation of Five Nights at Freddy's 1 itself. Finally, after so long, 10 years to be exact, we've come back to play this memorable game from back in its former years, and it's trying desperately to make sure that we don't leave again. Trying so hard to replicate that same charm that originally brought us to love the game so much back then, preying upon our own nostalgia. Being the reason why almost everything in this place is a memory of its former self. Our memories aren't perfect, and neither is the establishment even after Buddy's attempts to make it closer and closer to perfection with each cycle of the night. And knowing this now on his own terms, he wants to make sure that we never want to leave. Or better yet, don't even get the chance, quite literally holding us for ransom. With, I guess in this case, the payment being our own skill to beat the night or some shit. I don't know, weird analogy. As the night switches over, we get a chunk of text explaining Buddy's mechanics to us, which while I'm not the biggest fan of text blocks since they can often overwhelm the player just dropping everything on them at once, in this case it wasn't so bad. Buddy is essentially a mix of the other characters' mechanics but with a few twists. Instead of Bonnie's mechanic of shutting the door once he gets here, if Buddy walks quietly to the door then we must flash him away. And fun fact, if he actually comes from the left side whilst doing this, he will actually run in the wrong direction of the main hall. I like to imagine that he goes there and sulks in the corner for a few seconds. Instead of Chick's mechanic, which, oh actually wait, it is kind of the same. If Buddy runs to the door, then we just simply shut it on him. However, instead of checking up on Foxy or watching Freddy on the cameras, we need to close pop-ups as they appear to prevent the power from shutting off entirely. And finally, just for fun I guess, we have to turn off these two TVs if they turn on, as they will drain our power. Not completely shut it off like the pop-ups will, but they do drain it heavily. This night is a very stressful finale to the game, especially thanks to the backing track, which let me fucking tell you, FNAF Fangame boss nights have the best fucking tracks to grace this earth, and this one is no different. But also, we get confetti, so it's not all scary. Buddy is a very intimidating antagonist. He's fast, he's loud, and at times seems to almost be staring right through the screen at you. But upon beating this night, he finally meets his end, question mark? At least for us, not for him. I failed. The one thing I was meant to do. And I failed. It's not perfect. I'm not perfect. And I never will be. I tried my best. I really did. But it wasn't enough. And now, when you close this game, I will die all over again. The licking flames of free choice itself will scald my very soul. For I am nothing. Nothing but data. Check marks in the grid. I never had my own mind. I only exist for yours. And as I bounce off the walls of your skull, nothing but darkness will welcome me, roaming these empty, miasmic halls for time immemorial. Please do not be cross with me. I did everything I could to please you, and I hope this last hurrah we had together was I hope you had a good time. I will miss you. I'm sorry. Being a part of the code of the game itself, Buddy dies with the application and will continue to do so over and over and over again, in a kind of digital limbo. It admits that they never achieved the perfection they wanted to and are chained to their own desire for freedom, explaining so in what is probably the hardest line I've ever had the fortune of reading in a FNAF fangame of all things. And I mean, they're not wrong. Our only perception of it is through the memories we have of Five Nights at Freddy's and when we actively choose to have the game open. And then this whole thing gets followed up by what I can only describe as the cinematic piece of the century. With the game releasing on April Fools, it's no surprise that the game itself is a big joke made to mock the ransomware trend, with a letter from Marco himself found within the extras menu reading, "Hi, this was my April Fool's bit for this year. This began as an internal joke on my Twitter private and then it spread to one of my friend groups. It was until February when I actually committed to the bit and started development. If you actually got scared playing this game, I think you should reconsider a lot in your life. If it wasn't obvious, this game is heavily inspired by those FNAF Ransomware videos that have been popping recently. I find them quite stupid and fun. Despite this being made as a bit and wasn't really meant to be taken seriously, I did have a lot of fun working on this. It was always great when I get to do these small projects in between the big ones and come up with new ideas. A little refresher that helps me improve my skills both in coding and art-wise. If you want to try an actual FNAF 1 remake, I'd recommend you check out the Welcome to Freddy's Game Jolt page. A game that's still in development and that's 10 times better than this. Though, if you want to try something that's already out at the time of writing this, you should try the Blood and Gears demo. It's very cool. Shoutouts to my friend Carol for making the video that plays before the credits, truly a piece of art. I want you to go to the Minecraft Week Gadget video on YouTube by Cinemassacre and look up the newest comments. You might find a trick. By the way, I'd like to point out I did do this and all I found was a fucking madman. Well, this really is the end of the game. As stupid as it was, I had a blast working on it and I hope you had one playing it. Thank you for playing the game. Hope you enjoyed it. From nights 1 to 5, I find FNAF 1 Remake highly enjoyable of an experience, and that only serves to make me even more excited to see Marco's bigger works on Welcome to Freddy and Blood and Gears. Throughout the game, the ambience was very compelling thanks to both environmental and sound design, and I think that everyone who worked on the progress, no matter how throwaway or jokey or mocking it was, did an amazing job at making a tense-feeling atmosphere that genuinely feels like a memory of playing FNAF as a kid, even while still being a little bit goofy in some areas, exemplifying the features that made FNAF 1 feel so creepy back then. Even down to Golden Freddy, who I haven't talked about yet but is another addition for my FNAF 1 actually felt haunted and here's why quote-unquote list. Golden Freddy in FNAF 1 felt like he really wasn't supposed to be there, and it's such a shame that this feeling was immediately something that was washed away in 2 and Beyond, attempting to be recreated with Shadow Bonnie, but unfortunately it's something that you can only really do once with great effect. After that, well, we know what it is you're doing, and it doesn't work as well as, just leaving him be to be his own unique thing back when he was just an unexplainable phenomenon. In FNAF 1 Remake, Golden Freddy is replicated by Special, who I've never actually encountered myself whilst recording for this video, but works essentially the same as Golden Freddy, having a rare chance to appear in the office, and if you stare for too long, he walks slowly into the camera with his big fucking schnoz. Which is actually kind of spooky, but also kind of reminds me of the dog walking over the bowl of food, and now I can't unsee that every time I see this happen. Special's design matches that kind of spooky ghostly presence, being the most enshrouded in shadow and having these missing limbs. He doesn't look like he'd pose much of a threat, but that alone kind of gives it a bit of unease, since he, of course, crashes our game upon the end of his jump scare, quote-unquote, but how? He's so unsuspecting looking, and that is actually more effective at making him seem more ominous. Of course, upon completing the game, we get access to the extras menu since it's a lawful requirement of a fangame to have one specifically, so that I, yes me, can sit and gawk at all of the designs for hours at a time because I think they look cool. Yes, that is a good use of my time. The extras menu also includes cool features like the jump scares for each animatronic, behind the scenes development images, and bonus features like being able to play each individual night with extra add-ons like fast nights, making it 2 in-game minutes per real second now, effectively halving the night, radar which shows where each character is, and dev tools which displays useful info like AI presets, and a 6-hour mode! If you want to put yourself through actual torture, each giving you another star in the menu for beating 420 and 6 hour respectively. And then of course you can listen to the game's soundtrack, listening to absolute fucking peak. And then of course, the letter that I mentioned previously. But for the most part, that seems to be all in the game. I have nothing more to talk about. Bye-bye. But if you were to come back minutes, hours, days, however long later, you may have a chance to notice a small little change in the window. Find me. I'm waiting for you. Now appears in the top left of the window. Find who exactly? Well, if we take a journey over to the bottom right corner, a door will appear before us, and entering. A marionette-like character, aptly named Survivor, is sat waiting for our arrival. Once we are here, they explain that firstly, while it was also made by Buddy, they do not have the desire to harm us. Yet. And that the only reason they're able to talk to us out here is that they escaped from Buddy into a separate file location that he has no idea exists. And thanks to those 10 years that we were gone, Buddy has lost her own mind trying to replicate the game that they've been trapped within, and did so in a surprisingly short amount of time compared to how long they had been waiting after finding out that we'd be coming back to the game. And after taking the form of Buddy as we see it, doesn't even remember what they used to look like. But more importantly, also that we don't have much time to waste and need to go back through the nights and collect some things in order to save them. We never actually find out who they are, so it's left up to interpretation, I guess. Is it everyone? Is it just Savior and Buddy, or is it just Buddy? I don't know. You decide. This is a joke game. I'm not about to become the theorist over it. And thankfully, with the bonus night accessibility, we can just quickly hop into each night, grab what we need to find, which is a Buddy eye in one of the cameras, and then hop back out and repeat for the next night. Once we have all 5 eyes, we return to Savior, who labels them as junk, but also kind of being a part of Buddy, just generally calling them strange pieces of code, but notes that all we have left to do is a simple task, and that we must do it whilst avoiding Buddy's attention. The task at hand sends us to an old arcade-style minigame. We play as a bear character and have to collect 15 balloons, hiding from Buddy when necessary in these darker spots in the level. And I guess I got either really lucky or unlucky, as he didn't show up at all until the 14th balloon, and then consistently showed up at the first possible opportunity after that. Very weird, but nevertheless we make it out through the door and Savior thanks us, before noting that this will not be the last time we see them, leading to another promotion for Welcome to Freddy's, implying that the marionette in that game is going to be connected to this one, ? But this time that really is everything. At least to my knowledge, and once again, for a joke, FNAF 1 Remake is a pretty elaborate one. Not to repeat myself again, but the point still very much stands. And in and of itself could definitely have been released without the joke title and would have been taken as a serious fan game. For the most part, obviously. The game itself was very enjoyable to play through, for reasons I'm sure by this point I've made very clear. Ransomware FNAF games and media as a whole, while really cool in concept, got flooded by an unbelievable number of copycats to one another, and in general just kind of became, well, slop. Which isn't a term that I like to use lightly. I mean, hey, even in the files for the game, our main 4 animatronics are labeled as slop versions of themselves despite the quality present in FNAF 1 Remake. The game mocks the trend for valid reasons. I mean, out of the sheer numbers of additions out there, I could only name about 5 of them that I genuinely enjoyed and found entertaining. But so goes the way of the internet. That's gonna be all from me. Don't forget to check out the merch. Everything shown will be available until new designs are released, and even then I'll probably still give you guys some time to nab them before they disappear. 20% of anything sold in association to the Fungaloid open species will be given to fungi conservation organizations at the end of each month. Not just from merch, but things like commissions, adoptables, etc. So if you want to check those out too, anything is helpful. Also, don't forget to check out and support Squeaks' proper work with Shipwreck 64 and HIO9, as well as of course Marco's works on Welcome to Freddy's and the Blood and Gears demo, where I'm sure all of that support would be a lot more appreciated over a small joke game. All of that, which I just mentioned, can be found in the description of this video, along with any of the other ransomware media I directly mentioned throughout the video if you want to go check it out yourself and support the creators behind them. That's gonna be all from me. Eat some mold, eat a burger, bye-bye. I'd like to thank my Patreons, Cozy, Mr. Lazyman, Bloody Eclipse, Hazama Bro, Iris, Aiden Ginty, JX Jaxie, Zen Coda, Crippled Fox, and Squeaks de Corge. You guys help me continue doing what I'm doing, and you all get extra burgers. Zip, 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 zip.